work in the banking and finance sector as a commercial analyst. So the role of a commercial analyst typically varies, and this could depend on the organisation that you work for or the types of commercial customers that you are servicing. A commercial client is simply a business that turns over £2 million plus or has a complex company structure that perhaps falls outside of the UK. So one of the things that I do in my role is that I support a commercial banking director with their portfolio, and I support with the sanctioning of new credit facilities, monitoring existing facilities, and all other due diligence processes within the portfolio. So I graduated from Canterbury Christchurch University in 2016 with a Bioscience degree. Now this is interesting to many people given that I now work in finance. There's an entire story behind it and I'm going to try my best to summarise that for you. Growing up, I was always encouraged to become a doctor. I was always encouraged to opt into the science courses, going from secondary school to college and ultimately to university. I remember when it came time to select a degree and select a university, not really knowing what I was going to study and why I was going to study it. I remember seeing all the options available to me and not really understanding the difference between biochemistry and bioscience, or pharmacology and pharmacy, and ultimately what kinds of careers that each of these degrees would then lead me to. I didn't understand what I wanted from a career, and I didn't actually understand myself. And I know that most people go to uni to find themselves, or most people discover their passions whilst they're at university. And looking back now, I think I selected a university and a degree based on all the wrong things. So fast forward a couple of months, I'm at university, I'm away from home, I'm meeting new people, I'm learning a lot about myself, I'm in a completely different environment, and I started to lose passion for the degree. And not to mistake that from the lack of motivation to attend a lecture. For me, it was deeper than not wanting to go to lecture and wanting to go out and things like that. And don't get me wrong, I don't think all aspects of the degree were terrible. I see aspects of my degree now that relate to what I'm doing, and that I enjoyed back then and I'm still enjoying in my current role. But for me, I just was not passionate about science. I wasn't passionate about the things that I was doing, the assignments that I was doing. I wasn't interested to really know, the background of certain things. I would rather just get my assignments done and just pass, basically. And that was my approach for most of my degree. I was fortunate enough to have motivated people around me, so I wasn't able to give up completely, because I'm also coming from a background where failure is not an option. You have to finish university. So I think that's what got me through. And then moving on to my second year, I started to work at a bank part-time in customer services. And at that time, it was just a part-time job, just something to get extra money to get through university. And I remember the more I was feeling disconnected from my degree and the options that would be available to me after I graduated, the more I was seeing opportunities within the bank where people who had started in a similar position that I had a year, 2, 3, 4 years later, were doing great things. They were doing things that they never thought they would do. They had picked up new skills. Some of them had gotten new qualifications and were really building their careers in finance. And where previously science was the only option available to me, for me it was science or failure. Now seeing a completely different industry, a completely different world, and seeing people succeeding and seeing that, it's not science or failure, there's other options and you can succeed in something else. My interest started to grow in finance. And one of the things that I used to say to people when they asked me, so what do you want to do after uni? I would just say lab and research. And for most people, that was the end of the conversation, because it's like, oh, wow, that's interesting. But nobody really questioned what lab and research entailed. And to be honest, if they had, I wouldn't have had the slightest clue, because I didn't know myself. I would just say lab and research because it seemed interesting. But looking at my personality and just what I do now, I think I would have been really bored in a lab. But back then, also not realising that there is more to the science industry than working in a lab and doing experiments. At that time, that's all I knew of what my degree could potentially lead me to. So I'm seeing that there's other options available to me, and science is not the only way. It's not science or failure. And I'm building interest in finance. I'm learning a lot about myself, and I'm loving the interactions. I'm loving learning something new that's completely different to where I'm coming from. And I felt like I was also good at what I was doing. I was getting a lot of great feedback. So it gave me confidence that actually I can do something else. I can be good at something else. I can learn something else, and it's okay. So now we're in 2016 and I'm graduating. It's supposed to be one of the best years of my life, and my personal life starts to fall apart. My final year was extremely stressful. My dissertation failed. My dissertation failed me completely, and it was just a very stressful time. And then having graduated, celebrating that, at least that's over. Now I can put this degree behind me and just forget the whole thing. And having to really make a choice as to what I wanted to do. On one hand, I was searching for lab related jobs. On the other hand, I was trying to find out what my career options were if I was to pursue finance. And I remember the hardest part of this whole thing was trying to explain to friends and family what I was about to do. Having almost feeling like I had to justify my reasoning. And I shied away from that conversation with a lot of people because I felt like they simply won't understand, especially like I said before, where it was science or failure. And I felt like even saying that I wanted to change was admitting that I failed in something, that perhaps people would think that I'm not pursuing the science route because I'm not smart enough, or I'm not good enough for it, so I'm settling for something else. Once I had made a decision and gotten around to speaking to my friends and family and just letting them know what I had decided to do, I had to also sit down and be honest with myself, and ask myself, why finance, and what do you want to do in finance, and how do you think you're going to get there? Almost kind of creating a 5-year plan at the time. At that particular moment, I was really interested in the mortgage process. I was hearing more and more that, banks make money from lending. My friends were also buying properties at the time, and I really just wanted to understand the lending process for myself. So I went into a mortgage operations role, which was an entry-level role at the time. I found myself a mentor who was also in mortgages, and one of the things that gave me confidence and reassurance with my mentor was that she had also made a career change. Her degree had nothing to do with what she was doing at that point, and seeing how she was being successful in her career, and seeing how her career had turned out, and how for me that was a success story of somebody who had made a career change, and they were not regretting it, and they were not failing at it as well. So I was doing that for a couple of months, and quickly realized as well that the role was very transactional. It's an operations role, so by nature it would be. But knowing that I'm not so much of a transactional person when it comes to work, I like to go into work not knowing what I'll be facing. I wanted a challenge. I wanted to be able to make decisions and really problem solve a bit more, and really take ownership of certain things and run with it. So an opportunity came to join an internal training program to develop you into a relationship manager. And within the relationship manager job, you have lending, which is still an interest at this point. You had business development, which for me would have been the biggest struggle because I wasn't so confident, but I felt like that's something I could work on, that's something I can build. You had networking, which I loved because I love to meet new people. And you had, just the onboarding process and all the due diligence that goes in with that. So I went for that, and I did that for 12 months, and then eventually became a relationship manager. And whilst I was doing that and building all these new skills and learning all these new things about businesses and about company structures and so many things, I was still very interested in lending. But now it wasn't personal mortgages, it was business lending. And that role exposed me a little bit to SME lending, which is a very basic level. But again, I found a mentor. And one thing that I've always done with my career so far is at every stage finding a mentor, because I think that sometimes people go into mentorship thinking that you can have one mentor for life and you're stuck. But sometimes, having short-term mentorships where this mentor will take you from A to B based on their experiences, and then another mentor will take you from that place to another place. So I found a mentor, and I had a few people who were quite senior, who had really successful careers in credit, and really sit with them from an early stage to ask them questions about what credit was like, and what I would need to do to get into credit, because again, I have no qualifications in finance. I had no experience in credit as well, and at the time, the credit I was doing was very basic. So to them, that's not even what credit really is about at the time. And really just communicating that interest. And I'm just thankful as well that, I've had people and mentors who have invested their time, invested just their support into my career as well, and have made themselves available to me when I needed them. And, did the relationship manager role and really doing a lot in my own time, learning about credit, and building my internal network as well, which ultimately led me into being a commercial analyst with the hopes of going into credit very soon. So in terms of my next step, I'm really hoping to build a career in credit longer term. I haven't set my heart on a particular job title. I'm more of a believer that the day-to-day of a job is what you should focus on more. Sometimes we go for jobs just based on how it sounds or how it looks on our CV, but the day-to-day does not live up to the name of the title of the job itself. So I spent more of my time trying to build particular skill sets ahead of the kind of job that I want to do in the future.